Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low-budget show. It's the show so low, there is no budget. It has no budget. And if we ever had a budget, it probably wouldn't go towards this show. What would it go towards? I don't know, maybe better stuff. Well, I guess the better stuff does go towards the show. Man. Weird week, it's just been a lot going on for me, and I'm not going to get into it. Don't know why I brought that up at all, but it's been a lot, and this episode, I was like, we're going to talk about Edgar Wright films. He's an interesting director, and somebody that I know a lot of people have reverence for, but as I was kind of like going through this list, I came to the realization I don't have a lot to say on any Edgar Wright film. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. Lucky for us, there was an event on the weekend called Disney Plus Day that took up a majority of the news. So we're probably going to be splitting this video in half, where we're going to be talking about the Disney Plus Day there. Then we're going to be talking about Edgar Wright films. And at the very end, we're going to be hearing the audio review that I did for Last Night in Soho, which is an interesting film. And I'm excited to see what people think about it, because it's just very weird and very different. So, like I said, we had Disney Plus Day. This is the second year anniversary for Disney Plus, whatever that means to you. What a good job for this show. Basically, they were just like, we could do a fandom, but we're going to do it weirder. Instead of like you having to like sign up for a website, confirming your age, we'll just put all our shit on Twitter, and then really nothing happens. Okay. Fandom is interesting to me. I do like fandom. I don't really like Disney Plus Day. I think whatever this was kind of weak. If somewhere in the middle of dropping it on social media and the 4-hour event of fandom, we could like meet up and maybe do like a 2-hour like Hall H panel kind of thing online where we stream it maybe through YouTube or through Facebook or something. That to me is the healthy medium between the two. But as it stands, I did like fandom more. It felt more like an event. It felt more like it was about the fans, as opposed to this where it's just like, information dump, bitches, here you go. And there was an information dump, so let's get into it. It's not a lot what you're expecting. It was a lot just like, here's a logo for something we're working on. Here's a sizzle reel for that show everyone's looking forward to. And I don't know, it was okay. So I think the biggest thing that dropped at the beginning was actually something that wasn't really connected to Disney. It was just more like from 20th century, which was the first official poster for the new Predator film called Prey. This is set like 300 years before the events of the first movies. It's with the Comanche like tribe. This looks fucking awesome. This is such a good idea. Like, I am just amazed that a studio that made so much just boring shit before this is just like, yes, we get what we're doing with Predator now. Oh, it looks good. I absolutely adore what that poster was. And next year on streaming, Predator's coming to streaming. Look, I'm probably going to do a video eventually talking about the stuff that Disney got because of Fox and what I'd like to see turn into like a new rebranding, but Predator on streaming is fucking awesome. And I think it's okay it's not going to be going to theaters because like who's going to see Predator anymore? But this sounds awesome. I really like that. That's really cool. So on top of that, we also got some news on Hocus Pocus 2. If people are interested in that, it's there. So that's something to look forward to if you would be interested in seeing that kind of thing. But like the first big reveal that really got me excited, the first thing that went, this is for me, was the Proud Family Louder and Prouder trailer. Because I grew up on the Proud Family. I love that show. It is so good. And it's back with updated animation, an updated voice guest, and oh, it looks great. I am super pumped for this show. It's going to be fun. It's just like, we're just bringing it back, baby. Bigger, badder, louder, and prouder. It looks so good. And it was such a fun and creative trailer. This show is just original in all the right ways. Like, it just struck the right chord of perfect and beautiful. I adored it. I really did. It might be one of the highlights to me of stuff we saw because it was just like, thank you. In February? February is so soon. Oh, it looks good. I loved the Proud Family trailer. And then we got a trailer for Baymax. It looked pretty cool. I'm not going to say Baymax blew my mind. It was just like, yeah, Baymax is helping people out now. That's kind of fun. I don't know if this is like a sustainable character. I just think whatever like the window was for Baymax, it feels like it's closed by now, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is good. Whatever. They also announced the new series of the Spiderwick Chronicles, which will be developing in live action. This is interesting to me because who gives a shit? There's just certain things, again, where I'm like, is this viable anymore? I think that first movie kind of like ruined people's like taste for this, but I just think there's nothing else worth exploring here. But whatever, maybe. Spiderwick. Well, I'll probably talk about that movie at some point. But I'm just like, wow, this is definitely this is a choice that's being made. Spiderwick. It reminds me a lot of like doing Percy Jackson. How is that gonna be cool? I think doing Percy Jackson now like falls into like the Artemis Fowl style stuff where it's like, is there an audience for this anymore? Because the people who grew up with like that first movie are the generation that read the books, and that generation is now 20-something-year-olds. Do they want to watch a show of a bunch of kids doing this? I don't think they do. So I think Spiderwick's kind of like the same way. That generation, the window has passed, and it just doesn't work anymore. But whatever. So like I said, for the Proud Family being one of my highlights of everything we saw, I think the best promotional material they did, and I mean this, for everything shown at Disney Plus Day, had to be when Warwick Davis just came out and talked about the Willow reboot, and he just walks up to the younger cast members, and they all act like they don't know him, they don't know what Willow is, they don't know anything involved in the production. It is so funny. Like, that video, Warwick is just the funniest guy out there, and just the fact that he's willing to commit to these bits, like literally, it opens up and the camera is out of focus because it's too high up for him to be seen in the shot, and then just like pans him low there. He's like, "Did you guys watch Willow?" They're like, "What? Willow's a movie?" Do you remember like the experience of seeing Willow in theaters when it came out? No, I wasn't born yet. I love it. It is funny, and I have no emotional connection to Willow, but I will watch anything where Warwick is just having a blast. And this sounds like it's going to be pretty cool. And that's exciting to me. We got a look at the Princess Frog cartoon, which looks really cool. I'm super excited for that one. We got Win or Lose by Pixar. It looks like it's going to be like an animated series where kind of just like baseball people. That's fun. Pixar did have like a show, like a little like 4-minute clip showing off their upcoming stuff. There's like Turning Red and Lightyear. Yeah, it's exciting. That one didn't just like capture the like interest to me, but it's cool. Stuff could be fun. And that kind of does it for like the more Disney and Pixar stuff. People I think were like, oh, we're going to see so much from Andor and, Book of Boba Fett and Mando and Obi-Wan. We got one small sizzle reel for Obi-Wan, and yeah, it's fine. It didn't like pique my excitement. I'm just like, okay. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen as Anakin, like, I love them. They were good. That's not my generation of Star Wars. I don't have that emotional resignation to that. So having McGregor come back, it doesn't pique my interest. But I do like this like kind of idea where he's like going on one last mission to protect these kids. That's exciting and kind of cool. So like the concept art they showed, it looks like it's going to be exactly what people want it to be. Is that going to be good? But that's all we saw from Star Wars. Nothing, literally nothing else. Why did they release the Book of Boba Fett trailer like a week before this? If they're doing this big event, this would be the time to show the Book of Boba Fett trailer. But whatever. I don't care. After that, we got a bunch of reveals for Marvel stuff that's coming up to Disney Plus, and I'm doing this in the order that we saw everything. So just bear with me if it doesn't seem like there's like some order to it. So the first kind of like big thing they showed off was the revitalization of the X-Men cartoon from the 90s. Again, I've never watched it fully. I don't give a shit about this. This feels like they greenlit it because people were probably watching it on Disney Plus wanting to get that X-Men fix. I couldn't care less about readapting this or doing a new story with it. So X-Men 97, an animated project coming to Disney Plus. Very cool. And from that, we got our first look. It's like 20 seconds for Moon Knight. Now, you guys know I'm a massive Moon Knight fan. It's my favorite comic book character ever. And I was thinking, should I do like a speculatory video for this? I don't want to. Instead of breaking down like every scene, being like, oh, why is his reflection not shown here? What's that thing in the background? Why is May Calloway being dragged away here? I'm not going to do that. I just want to say I was sold on what we saw. I think it looked strong. I think it looked intriguing. Everything about it worked pretty well. I'm also going to say this. Very interesting choice of voice. Like that is a choice you're making. And I just saw some stuff online. Maybe they're going to be adapting like the ultimate version of Moon Knight a little bit where he's got like the voice of the child inside of his head. I would fucking love that. I'm not a big fan of that, but if they had the balls to say like Mark Spector, one of his personalities is a fucking child, that would be sick. That'd be sick. Like, I would just adore that, and very, very interesting. I did kind of do like a little post on my YouTube saying like, there does give me like this like certain aesthetic where it's like the French New Wave kind of meets like the 70s independent movement. It's got that aesthetic to it, like the close-up shots, the long tracking shots. I think it looks amazing. I like that a lot. And it was almost overshadowed by She-Hulk. Because fucking hell, if She-Hulk didn't look amazing. Oh, that was amazing. Like, just the back shot of her hair and, like, the entire, like, bodysuit and the green skin. And Tatiana Maslany looking gorgeous and amazing. It worked. I think it's going to be fourth wall breaking. Mark Ruffalo's dressed up like Bill Bixby. Like, that's it. That's the tone you go for. A weird Law and Order kind of like homage to like a 70s crime drama. That's brilliant. And I think She-Hulk just looked amazing in that. We didn't see her face in the full green CG, but damn, that was impressive, and it was just a highlight for me. Of course it was. It was so cool. We got some more footage for Ms. Marvel. I'm excited for her. I believe they said like around summer 2022. I'm starting to wonder, and I don't know if this is the case, because after Hawkeye, there is no show for Disney Plus scheduled. I'm starting to wonder if maybe Moon Knight and She-Hulk are going to come out before Ms. Marvel. Maybe one of them will? I think they might. I honestly, I could see there being the break because we got No Way Home in the Multiverse of Madness. So let's say Ms. Marvel comes out June, July. I could see something maybe dropping in April. Could be Moon Knight or She-Hulk. We'll have to wait and see. So, Ms. Marvel looked good. We have the official confirmation for Echo being announced, spinning out of Hawkeye. Alekwa Cox looks fantastic in that role. I'm super excited to see that, what that's going to be. An animated Spider-Man freshman year project, which is going to be the beginnings of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. That is exciting for people who are interested in that. Like, to me personally, I don't really care. I think doing the origin again is so easy. And we should just move forward from it because he's obviously going to bigger and badder things. Why should we waste our time backpedaling to where he was before we do the bigger and better things? Whatever. Moving on. A couple weeks ago, too, we got the Variety report that Agatha Harkness was going to be getting a spin-off. We have the confirmation that's called Agatha House of Harkness. Great title. I think House of Mystery would be cool, too, or like Agatha Strange Tales. Like, I think this could be just like, let's go into like the bizarre world, and like each episode will be its own standalone adventure where Agatha explores some dark twists in the Marvel cosmology or in the horror cosmology. Like, that could be cool. Because Catherine Hahn is so amazing, and she can hold her own as a lead. She can definitely hold her own as a lead, so let her do that, and that's very exciting to see. Of course, we got, season 2 of Loki and What If coming. Those were announced already. Ironheart got a new logo. Armor Wars got confirmed. We have the official confirmation that Marvel Zombies will be its own animated project. Not surprising in the slightest. Because I'm sure the numbers on that What If video were just like, yeah, this is worth it. I hope it's its own standalone thing just because I don't need to see like the origin of that world. I just hope it's something special. I hope it's like the comic book and just this like tragic bullshit piece of just like despair or poverty and fucking cruelistic intentions. Like that'd be amazing. But I seriously doubt that's going to be the case. But that would be pretty cool. And to end off our talk for Disney Plus Day, we got our first look at Samuel L. Jackson in the Secret Invasion show. He's looking old. He's looking scarred. It's a show I don't really care about, but hey, I will support anything with Sammy in it because he's a fantastic actor and he could do a lot of cool stuff. So, not a lot of news there. You know, it's not enough to like cover its own video like we did for DC Fandom, but it's still kind of exciting. Interesting stuff. But this is only part one of this video. When we come back from the break, we're going to jump into the films of Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright. I think he is one of the most interesting filmmakers of our time. And as I was like writing down my notes for this, and I didn't do a lot just because, like I said at the beginning, I had a realization I don't have a lot to say on him. Here's what I do want to say about Edgar Wright. He is like the perfect kind of, I think, like bro filmmaker where he's just like, I'm going to make something that is artsy and interesting, but it's also going to be stylized and just creative, and it's going to be for everybody. That's very cool. But then as I was like looking at the list, I just had this like realization, like, no, his movies aren't really for everybody. There is some really good stuff he has done that I thoroughly enjoy. But I also just think, is he a great filmmaker? I don't know. I think he is a good filmmaker. I don't know if I could put him on a list of greats. I think he has a name behind him, and like somebody in the same vein of like Bruce Campbell or Alan Tudyk, I think there's an audience for what he makes. But I don't know if I can actually say Edgar Wright is a fantastic filmmaker, or he is just like the perfect filmmaker. He is cool. He's somebody I would love to talk shop with. I think talking to him about like the writing process or about films he loves would be an enjoyable time. And I think working on one of his sets would be an absolute blast. But as it stands, just looking at this list, I think there is this clear idea that he knows how to make a film, but that film isn't for the wide audience. He is, I wouldn't say he's a Spielberg. I also wouldn't say he's a Scorsese. He is that perfect balance of auteur and everyman. And when you are kind of like in that middle zone, you don't really have your audience built. And I think a clear example of that is Last Night in Soho isn't doing that good at the box office. You know, I think Baby Driver was his most successful, but that's also just like a really weird oddity. We'll get to it. And some of his other ones, I don't think they did that well. Home releases, they did great, but interesting stuff. So he's a recent guy. He's pretty young in terms of like an auteur director, and he hasn't done a lot of films. Like with not including Last Night in Soho, he's done maybe 7 films, and one of them's a documentary. I don't know how much I have to say on this guy, and it's kind of sucks because I'm like, he's a guy that people revere. You know, people will talk about his films in such high regards, and maybe I'm just missing that part of me that thinks that about him. He's a good director. I will never criticize his directing skill. But I don't know. Something about the way he tells his story, maybe it just doesn't work for me. So his first film is something called A Fistful of Fingers in 1995. And let's start off by saying I've never heard of this until I did my notes. I guess this is what puts him on the map? I don't really think it puts him on the map because in 2004 he does Shaun of the Dead, and that's the film that puts him on the map. This is the film that gives him every job going forward because it is, I think, the closest to perfection he's done in a film. You know, it's a tight script, the comedy is hilarious, the cast is fantastic. Working with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost will become a staple for him. And they are just a fantastic duo that knows how to perfectly play into his wheelhouse. This is just like a bolt of lightning coming out of nowhere and striking everything in this perfect balance of great filmmaking, great storytelling, and just culminating in something just spectacular and original that you rarely see anymore. And especially, this is like right before the zombie genre got played up, so it still has that like kind of just like perfect hint of interest to it, which makes it special. I would hesitate to say it's my favorite Simon Pegg and Nick Frost movie. I think it's the best one they've done together. The later ones, they're good. The Cornetto trilogy is a fun watch if you want something that's just different in your viewing pleasure. It's a fun one to watch. I don't know if I would say it's perfect, but just Shaun of the Dead is just so strong. And that script alone is just so powerful. And you get the sense like this guy knows how to write. He is a fantastic writer who knows how to play with dialogue, who knows how to craft characters. He's like a really, cool Wes Anderson, where he's like, it's quirky and weird, but it's appealing. It's not off-putting. You don't watch it and you're like, what the hell am I looking at? You watch and you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. This is cool. This is different. I can enjoy this. I can be a part of this world and enjoy what I'm looking at, which is something that is rare to see. And it all starts with Shaun of the Dead. That film just worked for him. It worked for the world. I think it's got one of the best received of all his films, one of the best received horror comedies, one of the best received zombie movies. It's just an insanely strong film. And it works on so many levels. And it's probably the most accessible of his films until his later stuff, which is very cool to see. Very cool. Then comes 2007 with the follow-up to Shaun of the Dead called Hot Fuzz. Now, Hot Fuzz, I think this is where you start to see, like, okay, this is not gonna be for everybody, which I get it, because this one's a lot. And I think of all of the Cornetto trilogy, Hot Fuzz is the one I like the least. It just doesn't work for me that much. Like, the jokes are just too jarring and just too much as to make it special. I think the comedy is fine. I think the storytelling is very interesting. It's definitely trying to be like the opposite almost to what Shaun of the Dead was, where it's like, hey, I was this type of guy. Now I'm playing this more like aggressive persona, abrasive even in a way where I'm just more physical with you, more in your face about everything. And I don't think that always works. This is a fine film. It definitely feels like it matters, or like it had like some emotional impact for Edgar Wright when he made it, but I don't know if it's that special. I just think it's solid. Like, there's nothing else to it, really. And that kind of sucks. Like I said, like, I don't have a lot of thoughts. Like, these are cult classics. These have been revered by everyone. And when you get that cult classic status, it's either the audience is there for everything of it or the audience isn't there for any of it. And I'm kind of just like there for everything Edgar Wright does, but I'm also not like obsessed over it. I'm not going to like overanalyze it. It's just solid storytelling. And speaking of solid storytelling, that takes us to his first, and I think his only, like something based on an IP because he didn't do Ant-Man. In 2010, we have Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and weird. I wholeheartedly believe there was a time pre-MCU like picking up and becoming the big franchise it was, where attempts like this, like John Carter, Tron Legacy, those kind of things, Scott Pilgrim included, the audience wasn't there yet, and they weren't ready, because if Scott Pilgrim came out today, I think it would do gangbusters, but it just wasn't there yet, and now it's just this really cool niche film that feels very fun. It just has this perfect like blend of anime, comic book, and movie, which is like hard to capture, because Ang Lee did it with Hulk and it looked fucking terrible, but this is just like, nah, I get it. Yeah, this is going to be kind of its own unique looking piece, and it was. And it became this beautiful, intense, like just gorgeous looking thing with a great cast, an incredible cast with a bunch of people who'd go on to do better and I don't know, maybe not better, but bigger things. Brie Larson, Kieran Culkin, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Brandon Routh, Chris Evans, Michael Cera, all of these people doing amazing things now. And they all were in this like weird little independent thing just about a comic. That's cool. That is so weird. And it just amazes it works. And just the blend is so perfect. The jokes are so strong. The comedy works there. I think more than any of the Cornetto trilogy, I understand why this one has people coming back to it all the time. Just because it just is the perfect blend of all the machinations it's trying to bring together. And that is very special to see in a film like this. That it just all works perfectly well. And then leading from Scott Pilgrim, we go over to 2013, where we have At World's End, or The World's End? I can't remember. You know, I think it's The World's End. At World's End's the Pirates movie, isn't it? I like this film. I think it's like kind of, in a sense of like story too, it's also a sense of like Edgar Wright's growing up. He has made these silly, campy things that people enjoyed, but now it's like, no, we're done this. We're officially entering our adulthood. We're making these mature pieces now about a man clinging to his past and having to deal with like his family leaving him, his friends growing up and abandoning him in this world, while dealing with aliens. It's cool. And it's fun. And I just adore this one. It's just, there's something so unique about this kind of experience in filming where it has all the familiar beats that you've seen from the previous Cornetto trilogy. It's got Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are back doing their thing. But this one is just trying to be more mature, and I think that's a great progression when you're doing something with these same actors where even, just everybody on screen and off screen is progressing with the times. Like, we did our crazy thing. Now we're going to do our crazy thing, but it's going to be a little toned down, a little more streamlined, and just make this weird, beautiful art piece that is just somehow this beautiful looking film. That is just really rare to see in this type of like field, and it's just really impressive. I can't believe it works, because it shouldn't. It shouldn't, like, you don't often see like a filmmaker casually progress. You just feel like, oh, they did this and this is the turning point for them. But you just see like the Cornetto trilogy, and I think you could put Scott Pilgrim in there too. Like, there's the part of Edgar Wright that's like, here's the fun manic stuff I am when my 20s and my 30s, and now we're growing up, and now we're doing this more mature piece. We are having fun the way we always did, but things are different now. And The World's End is a great example of that maturity. Now, before we get to our next couple, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the Ant-Man stuff. Because in 2015, when the Ant-Man film was supposed to come out, Edgar Wright was the original writer and director attached to it. And due to creative differences, he dropped out, or Marvel decided to move in another direction. I get it. I completely understand why he didn't do it, because this is kind of, he'd be put in a box that I don't think he'd want to creatively be put into. And I think you can definitely feel like the parts of that original Ant-Man script in that movie that were Edgar Wright. Just the way it moves, the way the character talks, the way the story progresses, it's Edgar Wright. And I think if he did it, it'd be a lot more special, but maybe lose the thing that people like about it, being that oddity in the MCU. Still, it's a good movie. And still, Edgar Wright could have made something super special with it. But the fact that we're not going to see it doesn't bother me. Will we ever see Edgar Wright make a superhero or comic book film again? I don't think it's going to happen. I think the ship has sailed with Ant-Man, and because Scott Pilgrim, maybe years from now he'll do it, but I honestly don't think it's in his, I don't think he wants to do it, which is fine. You don't have to do these things if you don't want to. That's the thing people need to realize. So from that, he goes to 2017, where we get Baby Driver, which I think is his most successful film. It's also the weirdest in terms of his stuff, because this is the one that is I think the most simplistic in terms of his style. It's pretty much like, I love music, I'm going to make a movie about music. There's going to be racing and music, and it's cool. It's got some problematic people in lead roles, which sucks, but that just happens sometimes. And I think that almost hurts it now, where it's like, oh, no one really goes back to watch Baby Driver, which kind of sucks, because I don't think it's a bad film at all. I think there's some very good stuff in Baby Driver. I think there's some very fascinating portrayals in Baby Driver. The music's great. If you want to know a guy that just loves music, you have to look at Edgar Wright, because he just turns it into an actual character or an actual performance in his films, and that is so freaking cool to see. It just is so strong, so entertaining, and works so bloody well. I think it's amazing what he does, just working with a script and doing stuff like that. Baby Driver's cool. And Kevin Spacey's in it, Ansel Elgort's in it. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good script and a fun film, and it's definitely his most commercial success because it's the easiest to follow. And that leads us to the present day, where he has 2 films coming out. There's one that we're going to talk about at the end here, Last Night in Soho, that's in theaters now. But he also made this documentary called Sparks Brothers, which is about the band Sparks. Now, probably a lot of you young people don't know the band Sparks, but if you like music, you probably are familiar with Sparks, because they're influential up the wazoo. These guys did a lot of stuff, and a lot of people have imitated and copied what they did. And the documentary itself is fine. I don't think it's special. I love hearing musicians talk about their craft and all that stuff, but if you've seen one documentary like this, they kind of all go the same way. This one is very fun too. It's unique, it's kind of creative, but Sparks Brothers is just pretty standard. And I think it's going to get a lot more of that cachet because Edgar Wright put it together. But I don't know. It's just like another, not really delving into some of the more personal sides of these people. Just more like, hey, we were cool, then we weren't, then we're cool again. And that's almost every documentary. There's nothing really special about that, which kind of sucks to say. So, like I said, I don't know what else I can say about Edgar Wright. He makes good films. He makes weird films. He's matured as a director, and he's got his audience built in, which is very cool to see and very impressive. So we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to jump into the oversized review of Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho. This is the latest film to come to us from director Edgar Wright. He also wrote this, and you know what? I like Edgar Wright. I think he's a talented guy who has made some pretty fun movies and has made some pretty interesting stylistic choices. So he was like, what happens if I go make a horror movie? What would that look like? But it's also Edgar Wright, so it's like, what if a horror movie, but it's got good music and looks fun? That's him. It's like, I'm just going to make something that looks great. And I will say about this film, it looks freaking incredible. Like, the set pieces in this are fantastic. And he's a fan of this era. Like, the 60s are such a big inspiration to this guy that, of course, if he's going to make a movie about this time period, it's going to look fantastic and have the best looking colors and neon lights and the best dressed people and the best music and dances and clubs. It all looks great. Sadly, the story kind of falls apart because of this concept. I think stylistically, he wanted to make something that looked fantastic. And this is a love letter to the 60s. Like, it is perfected in this movie. The colors, the costumes, the set design, it's gorgeous. And I think when you base your film around, like, we're going to play with this time period, a woman in the present day who's obsessed with this time period, you're going to instantly run into a certain roadblock, and that is, how do you make this authentically cool without looking like a crazed woman is obsessed with this time period? And I think that's a really interesting factor that doesn't really play into this movie, is like, fandom's a cautionary tale. It's not a big thing, but essentially, this woman loves the 60s so much it ruins her life. And I think that is an interesting concept that you could explore with anything. Really, it could be for, fandom or sports. Liking something that hard, you lose your grip on reality. And I think that's interesting. So Thomasin McKenzie, who is a great actress, I loved her in Jojo Rabbit. I think it's her next big role she did. She is this woman who gets into a fashion school, and slowly she moves into this home, and she starts having these weird visions of this different time period where she's seeing this woman played by Anya Taylor-Joy, and because of this, it slowly starts to morph into this really interesting horror film. Now, I did say at the top there, I don't think the concept holds up that well. Sadly, because it is a horror film, it falls into a lot of these similar tropes that this genre gets stuck into. So instead of being this original or charismatic piece, it suddenly just falls flat with some of the stuff it's doing. Like, some of the character motivations become obvious and they just become cliched. And someone like the villain work just becomes boring and unstylistic, and everything about that just really takes what could have been a really cool spectacle done in the Edgar Wright style and just turns it into something we've seen time and time again. Which is a shame because it looks great, and if it's stuck to making itself a horror movie with that stylistic choice of the 60s and the lights and the glamour, I think it'd look cool. But sadly, like, the actual horror element of this just becomes so basic that you're just like, really? You just did so much. You did so much with the 60s here, and now you're just doing this here? It really, really sucks that that's the case. Honestly, it takes you out of the movie a little bit just how easily that's done. So, like I said, I'm a fan of Thomasin McKenzie. I think she's a fantastic actress, and she does pretty good here. You know, I think she's still finding her footing as a talent. Again, I'm not an actor, so I don't know how hard it is to do any of this stuff, but she does a lot of good, like, body work here. Just, like, the faces that this woman makes, they're nothing less than amazing because she just embodies this frightened, frantic person, and it works really well. You guys should know by now, I am not the biggest fan of Anya Taylor-Joy. I think she is the hotness right now, so she's casting everything. I will say her performance was the weakest to me. I just think it was easy. And you could have got, I think, a more I don't want to say influential. That may be the wrong word. I think you should have got somebody who's a little more representative of that time period as opposed to somebody who can make it look like that time period. If, like, it's weird to say. I think Felicity Jones just, like, feels like that time period more than Anya Taylor-Joy, who is just, like, a footprint as opposed to the blueprint, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's just weird that I just don't need to see Anya Taylor-Joy in everything. And she did fine in this. Matt Smith, actually, that guy's a creepy looking dude, and I like when he plays a schmarmy villain type. He's not really a villainish type in here per se, but he's an interesting character, and I think he is so good at doing the facial expressions that you buy everything he does, and that works really well. But I gotta give props to the late and the great Diana Riggs, because she is just a national treasure who just does so good in every performance she is in, and this was no exception. Like, if this was her final film, and I think it is, what a way to go. Because it kind of, like, I don't want to say sums up her career, but it's like, if you are a woman who worked in the 60s, and now you are doing this role, I think there's a lot of, like, closure for you, and I really like that part of it, so good for her just embodying that thing. And like I said, it's Edgar Wright all the way through. The music is fantastic. There's some great covers in here of some classic songs, which sound incredibly well and really cool. The lights look great. The dress designs, because it's about fashion. It is essentially a show about fashion. They look fantastic. There's something beautiful about it that's just so prestigious and glamorous, and I really enjoy that. There's one scene in particular. Actually, there's two scenes in particular I like really, really, really much. Really much? Yeah, whatever. The first one, we're in this nightclub, and we're doing this beautiful shot with Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie switching roles as we're dancing around Matt Smith, because I found out in subsequent readings that that's actually one take. Like, they actually just went back and forth on set, and it is seamlessly beautiful and some of the best stuff of Edgar Wright's career, just seeing that scene. But also, there's one scene in the midst of the horror stuff that I didn't really enjoy, that I thought was incredible. It's hard to explain without seeing it, but you just see Thomasin McKenzie running down an alley, and the lighting is just perfectly, detective noir gumshoe shit, but the camera just slightly tilts and pushes in. It's hard to explain without actually seeing the shot, but it just, like, if that was this whole movie, if that sequence, like that beautiful just of a camera setup, of lighting, of horror, if that was the whole movie, I think I would have enjoyed this more. Because basically halfway through the film, not even, I think within the first 20 minutes, I figured out the revelations that were going to be at play. And that's not to say that would ruin your enjoyment of the film, because it wouldn't. If you didn't know that, or if you did know that, it still works. It still holds up really well. But there's just something about it that just makes you go, okay, that's been done a lot, and maybe it's an homage. He does like homages, so it could be. He's a guy who likes movies, so if it's an homage, then yeah, it works as an homage, but it's a standalone film. It's not that special, which kind of sucks. It looks beautiful, it sounds beautiful, but everything else about it, you've seen it before, which kind of sucks. But, Those who will like it are going to like it. Those who want a nice horror movie set with a little bit of a different prestige, this could be it. Now, it doesn't look like it did that good at the box office, but that's a whole other story altogether. But overall, Last Night in Soho, it's not a bad film. It's just easy. And I think that's what really sucks, because you got a guy like Edgar who's going to take chances, and when you do something that's easy, it just doesn't work out. And that kind of sucks. So, Last Night in Soho, I am going to give a 6 out of 10. Now, thank you guys for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.